So we can all concentrate on security guarantees. That's very important, but they're very, very vague. I have no idea what NATO light means. I don't think anybody does either, because if some NATO countries are involved with troops, potentially fighting Russian troops, I don't see how that isn't NATO. I mean, NATO would have to get involved. So we'll see.
Stephen Erlanger is the New York Times chief diplomatic correspondent in Europe who's helped steer us through to this point. Joins us again now. Stephen, good morning.
Good morning.
Donald Trump was sort of holding court, wasn't he? He seems desperate to show that there is momentum towards peace. How do you think yesterday went in actually trying to secure the next stage?
Well, partly this was an intervention by the part of the Europeans to get Trump off his Putin high from Alaska. I mean, this is really partly designed to protect Ukraine from being pressured by Trump to give up territory Russia hasn't occupied. So we can all concentrate on security guarantees. That's very important, but they're very, very vague. I have no idea what NATO light means. I don't think anybody does either, because if some NATO countries are involved with troops, potentially fighting Russian troops, I don't see how that isn't NATO. I mean, NATO would have to get involved. So we'll see. I don't know whether Britain would be willing to put troops in Ukraine. Poland isn't. The French, not clear. The Germans, not clear. The whole thing is incredibly vague. But if Trump, who does care about this, can get Putin and Zelensky in a room together, that would already be something. Now, the Kremlin, I don't think, is going to go for this. The Kremlin is talking about having negotiations at a higher level of representation, i.e. not leaders. I don't think Putin wants to be with Zelensky until there's a deal done, but we'll see. And the other thing that struck me just, it was like if you had a drinking game for how many times everyone thanked President Trump, you'd have been blotto hours before it ended.
Because the flattery, I mean, it was layered on very thick, wasn't it? As they went round the table. And I said at the beginning, it's a bit like Donald Trump was the conductor. He sort of then gave the opportunity to, let's say, Emmanuel Macron. Do you have something to say for a couple of minutes? I wonder how well you think the European leaders actually made their case, because the impression I had is they had quite carefully choreographed what line each of them would come at, and some of them, particularly the German Chancellor, was prepared to get his elbows out a little bit and say, look, we actually need to make some demands.
Yes, I agree with that. And also Macron, to his credit, said that he doesn't think Putin's interested in peace. Now, what we saw was this choreographed public thing behind closed doors, as they say. I suspect the conversation was a bit more pointed. Trump is unconvinced because Putin has convinced him a ceasefire is not going to be necessary and a deal can be done quickly, but these deals do not get done quickly, and there is a very long way to go. But I do agree that, without Trump, we'd probably be still sitting in the same place as before. But still, if you're Ukraine, I really believe no deal is better than a bad deal, because they are pretty much holding the line. And for another year or so, they'd be fine. So I think there's time for this to play out. Trump's in a hurry. Trump can get bored, but I think now at this point, he's invested in this. It's going to be very hard for him to actually drop it. The point is, for the Europeans and Zelensky, let's put pressure on Putin now to agree to a meeting, and I guess we'll go from there.
Yeah. What the European leaders really wanted was, I think, more detail on what Donald Trump meant when he said, we're going to give a very good security guarantee to Ukraine. I mean, what is there material that we know the US have promised at this stage?
Well, I'm not sure Trump promised anything except we're going to help a lot. I think what people want from the US is not necessarily troops on the ground, but continuing intelligence and air support. The US spy satellites, the integrated operational intelligence, that's the way you monitor a real ceasefire or a settlement. You don't really need airplanes so much anymore. You need drones and satellites, and the American stuff is just better. So I think that's part of it. And then also a promise that if things really go bad, that the United States would engage at least with air power. That's my assumption. I'm not basing that on any particular information, but I don't think Donald Trump wants to put American troops in harm's way, possibly inside Ukraine. The big question is whether Putin's going to agree. I mean, the whole point of this war, in part, was to keep Ukraine out of NATO. So why he would agree to have NATO troops inside Ukraine when he's been fighting to keep them out of Ukraine is one of those conundrums we'll have to see.
Yeah, that's the idea that Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, was putting forward, this sort of idea of NATO light. But as you say, Stephen, that's got significant problems further down the line. What we didn't hear yesterday was much talk about further sanctions on Russia. Where do you think we are there?
Suspended idea, not going to happen. Not as long as Putin keeps talking about a settlement and Trump keeps talking to Putin and phoning him from the Oval Office and consulting him. This is just off the table. They keep talking about it. Oh, maybe, but I just don't think Trump wants to do it. And Secretary of State Rubio did try to give an explanation as to why. He said if we hit them with sanctions, it won't end the war, and it will get in the way of a real discussion about peace. So I think that's their rationale, but it's not happening.
We obviously didn't hear from President Putin yesterday, but it is reported that Donald Trump did and interrupted at one point the meeting to phone Putin.
Yes, they had like a 40-minute conversation, so with translation about 15 or 20 minutes, and after the how you doing, Vlad, et cetera, it probably was a fairly short conversation. I think that it was concentrated on seeing if a meeting can be arranged with Zelensky and Trump. Alex Stubb said later in the evening that he thought a meeting might be arranged within the next couple weeks. So I think that's probably what that conversation was about.
Do you think that's ambitious?
Oh, I mean, Putin's meeting, I don't think he really wants to meet Zelensky, but if that's the price of keeping Trump happy, I think Trump can sort of make him do it. I'm not sure that produces much, to be honest, but it'll be another, media opportunity.
Stephen, as ever, it has been so great to have you on board to just explain, unpick some of the sort of different diplomatic details that we might have missed. Stephen Erlanger, the New York Times chief diplomatic correspondent in Europe.
And let us know your thoughts. I mean, is flattery acceptable? Is Trump? Do we need to give Trump more credit? Mick from Bangor says, long way to go, but in fairness, I think Trump does deserve some credit here for at least driving a process for peace. Can't see Biden having the wit or stamina to do this. Or is this just all a load of fluff and nonsense and nothing hard is ever going to emerge from it?